Hey, welcome into DomTime. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday night. It's a night of the week where we take some of the great area pundits, and we've been able to discover quite an array of them, mix them up, talk about some of the things maybe that we don't devote a full show to, or we have devoted a show to, and there's some updates, some things going on. Joining us tonight again, back for his fourth or fifth appearance, I found like this is the Tonight Show, is the president of Gross Communications, Dan Gross, formerly of the Daily News.
Thank you.
Welcome in. And Kevin Reardon, columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I write for the Daily News. We have every base covered. A lot of South Jersey, a lot of Philadelphia stories. One that I wanted to start with you, Dan. I mean, this is an all-timer. The Chuck Peruto story on this month's cover of Philly Mag is pretty amazing, both the picture, the backstory, with the girlfriend, I guess, or lover dying in his bathtub there in his home. What do you make of this cover story in ebook? First time that they've done something around this.
I thought it was pretty interesting that they chose to try something out like this and turn it into an ebook. A lot of their cover stories wouldn't necessarily translate to a national audience because they'd be very localized, whereas something like this, even though it happened in Philadelphia, has the kind of true crime appeal. I shouldn't say crime because I don't believe that a crime actually occurred, but it has the kind of global appeal of a story like that. So I'm curious to see how many books they sell. I don't know what kind of reports we'll see on that, but the story itself is fascinating. I mean, I think and since Memorial Day, when I think this unfortunate death occurred, you know, people have really been talking about it. What I think is unfortunate is, you know, this is a woman who's a private citizen. All she really did was happen to die not in her own home, and it's unfortunate that the fact that she was dating someone who was high profile means that we're now all privy to the, you know, last seconds of her life and the tawdry text messages she was sending, you know, as she died.
How would you deal with that? Then I'll ask Kevin too, as a journalist though, but don't you have to deal with that, or would you give her some zone of privacy here?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I understand the idea of using her text messages that were sent from the bathtub, you know, moments or hours before she died. Whereas if those kind of texts were sent weeks in advance, I don't think they would have been germane to the story, and they really probably would not have been used. But it's just, even, you know, having spent a decade as a gossip columnist, I still felt a little creepy reading a dead girl's final words to her boyfriend and her other boyfriend and her third boyfriend. So but it's still fascinating. I mean, what I think is unfortunate, and I've known Chuck for many years, there is the fact that his home was the venue in which this young lady died, I think has drawn suspicion on him that I don't think is warranted. I think it's extremely unlikely that he did anything to her. I don't think this grand jury is going to come back with any kind of, you know, assumption that Chuck did anything. It's been proven that he wasn't there at the time. And, you know, people can die or drown anywhere if they've been drinking a lot. And I think that's probably, I haven't seen any kind of autopsy or toxicology, but I think that's what we're going to wind up seeing has occurred. So it's unfortunate, I think, that people see something and they kind of just draw their own conclusions, like, oh, he killed her, he did this. I mean, I can't think of how many people told me the first weekend, like, oh, do you think he killed her? And I said, absolutely not.
Here's a question I have for you, Kevin, as a serious journalist. I read your column, et cetera. Coming off what Dan and I are talking about with Peruto, but just saw a study today on the web that Miley Cyrus and the twerking had 12 times the number of hits, Google searches, et cetera, the whole thing put together, than Syria did, which, I don't care, whatever we say, is war, life or death. And you got a lot of variables there that are happening with Syria. So how do you deal with that every day when there's an appetite for this type of thing?
Well, it's interesting. When CNN was running repeatedly the Syria, the gas attack video that was very gruesome and very disturbing, I was having lunch with some friends and we couldn't watch it. It was very difficult to see under any circumstances, and it certainly wasn't something that one wanted to watch, you know, during lunchtime. That's the kind of thing it's easier to turn away from than something that's frivolous, something like a Miley Cyrus video, where part of the pleasure of it, if you will, is the disbelief that anyone could possibly, you know, go in front of an audience of millions and perform in this manner. And I think just to touch on what Dan said about the Philly Mag story, I agree with him, and I'm curious what you guys think, whether anything would have been lost if those last couple of texts were not in the story. I don't know that they really added anything. I think what they did was I think it was verging on invasive. I thought the story was powerful and fascinating and all of that. I do wonder, though, whether our loosening of boundaries or lack thereof, like we saw with Miley, for example, and perhaps in this instance, whether we really gain anything when we do that.
And I didn't even think about it, but you both have raised a great question. The privacy of this girl, I'm just seeing it because of Peruto and the story, and I know him, and I agree. Doesn't seem like there's any real. I'm shocked there's a grand jury report here.
Right.
But let me talk about some things a little bit more frivolous that I think both of you may have covered because it's sort of on your beat. Miss America coming back to AC, coming back right here to South Jersey, and I've seen any number of columnists start to step up and hit them with haymakers already. But it's a different kind of Miss America now. I don't think it's quite married, but they're in this limbo land of the sort of hair and the college scholarship and Stop World Hunger and modernizing it, and they can't quite find the sweet spot.
Well, I think it's interesting. I was looking at the Miss America site today, and of course, on the site, which is very contemporary, very slick, very interactive, they talk about the Show Us Your Shoes parade. Now, that was something that grew out of the people of Atlantic City, which is a terrific tradition, but they've embraced that. And I think that shows, I'm not going to argue that Miss America is exactly hip, but at the same time, it is an American institution. The girls, my colleague Amy Rosenberg did a great piece in Sunday's Inquirer about the girls in their tiaras, going throughout Atlantic City, meeting the public, going down Pacific Avenue, which is not a portion of which is not the greatest part of town, and being well received. And
tiaras and AC on Pacific Avenue. Now that makes you want to go back into the gossip business.
Well, even hearing a chant of "Show Us Your Shoes" is a little different than what we're used to hearing people ask to be displayed of any women around Philadelphia or Atlantic City. But I personally think it's great that it's back in Atlantic City. I think people, probably one of the reasons that it left the city was people didn't care about it anymore and they weren't paying attention to it. I think that was one of the reasons that they chose to take it to Vegas and see what they could do with it. But I think that some people are getting excited that the pageant is back. And I do think there is a difference between Miss America and Miss USA, as you touched on.
Big deal. Donald Trump is just one word. There you go.
Right, exactly. That's all you need to know that Miss USA is. There's no
I don't see
credibility
Trump being
it.
involved anytime soon.
Right, and it is college money. A lot of these women are getting scholarship. Their entire college.
I would like to see a Miss America debate with full tiaras. I'd love to moderate that. That's one of the things I want to do in this business.
Yeah,
I'm serious. Smart women, but with a tiara.
Next time.
Exactly right. All right, more coming up with our great pundits here as we continue on our weekly roundup show on DomTime.